going live. Having a little bit of difficulty, stand by. There we go. All right, I'll go ahead and call to order the regular rescheduled meeting of the City Council for March 25th, 2024. Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Council Member Holt.
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks this evening for the bountiful blessings and safety that you have given us. Lord, we are thankful for our beautiful city. We pray that as we come together as council members, that we will rely on your wisdom to make decisions for the best for all to be able to prosper and have a safe and happy life. Lord, as we look around the nation, we see many cities and other areas that are suffering great strife and great problems. It makes us all more thankful for our own home and our own town. May we be a blessing to the community. Lord, we always pray for our first responders and all of our city employees who work daily hard to keep our city a beautiful, safe, and sound city. We pray, we're proud that it is a city where children can be raised and be happy and be safe. Lord, we ask that you would forgive us of our sins that we have committed, our sins of omission as well as our sins of commission. These things we ask in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Did we change it? What happened?
All right, thank you. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes from the March 14th regular meeting. Y'all have a copy of that. I'll open the floor for discussion. If there is none, I'd entertain Councilmember Gardner.
There was just something on Resolution 2024-08. I'm scrolling to it. The vote count was not complete. I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll down there and see. It just shows it passed by a 6 to something. And Councilmember Williams was a no vote because she was not here. So it's missing something there.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, I'll be happy to add Councilmember Williams' absence as the no vote and the other no vote. I can do that.
Thank you.
So we're saying to amend this to pass 6-2 with Councilmember Williams absent. And was there, do we know who the other no vote was?
I would have it recorded.
I have to look it up. So a motion to amend this to reflect the vote, and that'll be verified by the city clerk. Is there any, do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Is that motion clear? The motion is to amend the last two sentences of page 6 of the minutes that currently state motion passed with a 6-2. Councilmember Williams was a no, and change that to absent and then indicate whoever that person was. It was Councilmember Mosley, and then indicate that Councilmember Mosley was the no vote. So the motion and the second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Any other discussion on the minutes themselves? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as amended.
So moved.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order of business is the, I don't have any public comment cards, so, financial statement review, and then we'll hear from the auditors on the status of the audit. Beatrice is here. Do we want to, knock out Kyle first? Come on down. Mr. Carpenter, please, if you could just give us a heads up. You'll recall the council requested that y'all come in and just kind of update the council on the status of the, audit.
Sure. So Kyle Elmore here with Forbes. So I think we were here back in December presenting the 2021 audit. So we wanted to give y'all an update on how it might have been November before year end, on how the 2022 audit is going. I'm happy to report that the audit is going well. We've been through the majority of the testing. We have a draft of the audit report or the ACFR. So really right now we are basically entering the review process. We have a couple of levels of review that we go through as a firm. So reviewing the testing that's been performed and then putting the final touches on the report and sending that through review as well. So everything's gone well. I was talking to Beatrice about as far as final issuance. She said that she was looking for an issuance in May, and I don't think we should have a problem doing that. Hopefully the beginning of May rather than the end of May, but I think about 4 weeks for the review process is kind of the estimate there.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I know that audit has to be filed with the state before the end of June to keep us out of hot water. And so do you know how long it takes to actually file it once we've got the final? Do we do it after the final audit report? Is that how that works? Do you know?
I think so. I mean,
We send it over, and that gets sent over before the council even accepts it. Once the audit is complete from the auditors and delivered to us in its final form, we have to file it immediately with legislative audit.
Okay, so that may get filed as early as May then.
It should be whenever we get that report. So if it's at the end of April or in May, we have to file it within, I think, 10 days from receiving it. So sometimes we receive it and then we don't even have a council meeting for weeks. We file it basically as soon as we get it. And it's filed that day. We just email it over, and then they just put it on their next agenda. So it doesn't, assuming we get it by May, we will have no problem getting it submitted to legislative audit by June.
All right. One other comment I wanted to make is I wanted to let you know you all had come before us there in December and had spoken well of audit committees and things, that you had some clients like Fort Smith and Fayetteville that had audit committees. And so I had put forth a ordinance to go ahead and set one up here. It failed at the last meeting by a vote of, I guess, 5-3. And so it was close call. And I think it would have passed if I could have gotten that before him a little earlier when your comments were fresh. Because one thing I'd want you to talk about is some of the bigger cities probably have internal audit staffs, like Fayetteville. Do they actually have an internal auditor?
well, so I think when we were here in December, David Coleman that I work with talked to you. He's the audit partner on the city of Fayetteville and the city of Fort Smith. That I guess those are two with audit committees, and maybe he also does the city of Little Rock. So he could speak better to that as far as working with an audit committee. I know some of the cities do, some of them don't, but I don't work on any that do have an audit committee. So I think he would be better
Okay.
to talk through that process.
But would it be a general statement that the bigger a city becomes, they need, maybe something like that becomes appropriate?
I could see that so that you're not spending as much time in the council meeting going into the details of the financials. So I don't know if y'all, how many other committees you have, but it just, you see it from time to
Okay.
time, sure.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to us tonight and giving us a status. Sounds like we're on track and doing really well this year.
You are. We're really not pending any items from the finance team. They've done a great job. As we request things, as questions come up, we'll request more items, but we're really in a good spot.
Okay. Well, my thanks to you and Ms. Sousa. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Mr. Carpenter, thank you for coming out. You
All right,
are
thank you.
free to run out that door. Elmore, sorry. Next up is the financial, statement review, or the financials. Mary, I believe, will be giving them. Beatrice is here, but just recovering from some health issues. So here to answer any questions if you have them, but the floor is yours.
Good evening. Tina, I'm going to be on page 1. Looking at the financial report, we're going to the general fund. You'll notice some highlights here that in February we started collecting the revenue for 2024. We're on track to collecting our monthly average of about 1.4 million. Some property taxes were collected in February, as we don't have them allocated last year in February. Our public safety revenue for police and fire, that's going to be recognized a little bit later on. If you'll notice our investment earnings, they're still collecting about 3% on average, which is a wonderful increase. On our expenses, our public works, we've got about 70,000 in benefits and salary increases for 2024. Gasoline expense is higher in public works just because our February allocations have not been made. They were made this morning. Allocations to the different departments using those expenses. You'll notice in the planning and permits, it's increased by about 44,000, and that is because we did not have to pay for our membership in Pages in 2023, but from now on, we will be paying for that membership, about 43,000 a year. And the capital expenditures were spent about 140,000 more than last year at this time, and that is because we have purchased 3 police vehicles for about 100,000. Parks and fire have put in new security equipment, and then we've put money in on the pickleball shade. And on page 2, you'll see the balance sheet for the general fund, and 3 million is our 20% requirement over the operational expenditure, so we're well with, we're 10 million over, so we're doing good. On the street fund, you'll notice that our revenues are better than last year. Do want to point out that the City Street Aid Program, if you look at that, and also the state turnback, you'll notice that it's a flop, 46,000 under for the city street aid than from last year, and then our state turnback is 47 higher. And that's because for August of 2023, they changed their reporting, and that is because, let's see, Amendment 91 expired and Amendment 101 became permanent, and they did not separate the funds any longer. They just keep it all to the state turnback. And of course, our fund balance is doing great there. If you'll go on to sanitation, our 24 revenue and expenses are similar to 2023. And we do not have the expenditures in capital as we did last year, but last year we purchased a Freightliner, and so that's why the expenses were so high in February of last year. Let's see, police and fire fund, just all is well. And then if we go on, let's see here, for just financial updates, let me just look at this here. We're working with the OpenGov team to set up invoicing approval within the OpenGov software. And we're moving little by little to have the electronic payments instead of checks for our vendors. We're gonna always have checks, but we're trying to move more and more to electronic payments. And we are evaluating the OpenGov software to make sure we have all security measures in place. The 2023 financials, preliminary financials have been issued and made public. And then also we did invoice Team Summit $31,443.93 for that settlement agreement. And that's it. Any questions?
All right, Councilmember Mosley?
I know we've invoiced, on that, you set up an invoice then on that,
For the park?
for the park on the river?
Yes, sir.
Have we gotten that money in yet? Has it?
That I do not know. No, but it wasn't due for 90 days. It's not due for 90 days, so we have not as of yet,
Oh, okay.
but I'm sure that'll be forthcoming.
All right, thank you.
Any additional discussion? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept the financials. Motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank y'all. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That brings us to unfinished business. The first item of unfinished business is the second reading of ordinance 1113 enacting supplemental provisions of the city code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled ordinance number 1113, an ordinance adopting and enacting supplemental provisions of the city code for the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, providing for the repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, providing for the manner of amending such code, and providing when such code in this ordinance shall become effective.
Open the floor for discussion. Seeing none, this will be on third reading at the next council meeting, which brings us to the second reading of ordinance 1114, amending a master street plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled ordinance number 1114, an ordinance to amend the master street plan of Maumelle, Arkansas, and for other purposes.
I'll go ahead and open the floor for discussion. Seeing Councilmember Mosley.
Oh, yeah, this is the thing for Ridgeland and Diamond Point drives, the realignment and all that stuff, the arterial and collector realignment, is that correct?
It, one of the things it does is clarify that the collector standard for Diamond Point is from Odom to Emerald. And then.
Right, okay.
I believe it also has the realignment for the street plan
Right.
in primarily the extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Okay, yeah, I do have some comments on this.
The floor is yours, Mr. Mosley.
All right, thank you. This is all in regard to kind of pave the way for, and tell me if I'm wrong, if anybody, planning and so on, if I'm got my facts mixed up. I met with Mr. Grummer about a week ago just to try to make sure I understood the facts on this whole neighborhood and things. But this is a proposed neighborhood that is going to go in west of Diamond Point and I guess Ridgeland, and it will be tied into part of it will be tied into the new Pinnacle Mountain, I think, subdivision. And that would be the one that would use Ridgeland. But there's about 2 or 3 things that are going to be coming before us here that involve that neighborhood. And one of them is this street plan. On its own, I don't really have any problem with it, but it's part of this new neighborhood, and that's something we need to really think about. It's the other 2 ordinances, there's actually 2 of them tonight, or resolutions, which I thought were going to be at the next meeting. But one of them is to allow the for a cut through on Diamond Point to go to this new neighborhood, which would be Stony Mountain, and it would have to go across a path, a Maumelle path, and so it would be to vacate that path and allow that to happen. Another thing that's on the agenda tonight is a resolution to approve a conditional use for that new subdivision, Stony Mountain, which would allow them to, as I understand it, build lots and housing that are really below are really not within the code for what we're doing. So we need to think of these 3 things all together and either probably approve them all together or turn them all down together, is the way I see it. And then eventually, if these things all pass, what will eventually happen is within the year, it looks like we'll get something in front of us to actually annex that land in, because right now it's out in the county. So that's these are things we need to think about really hard, because this is going to bring in 244 new houses. It'll add traffic to Ridgeland. It'll add traffic to Diamond Point. One thing the neighbors out there, I don't think are even aware that this is really going on. They just haven't tuned in. I actually talked to a gentleman today that had some questions that he had heard about this, and he was actually involved in the citizen group that challenged the Ridgeland access a couple of years ago on Pinnacle Mountain. And so if he doesn't know what's going on out there, I don't think any of the residents do. So I will probably make a motion to postpone those 2 resolutions to at least the next meeting. We need to, I think as a city, we also need to decide whether we're going to go along the route of a lot of what Metroplan wants to do with filling up some of our suburbs with high density housing, the mixed use, and that type of concept, or do we want Maumelle to stay a bedroom community where we encourage mobility and the ability to get in and out of town fast? When I was meeting with Mr. Grummer, there was a lot of what he was saying was, yeah, we need to slow traffic down in these neighborhoods to keep from speeding. But I feel like which you can't argue with, but it just, the emphasis is changing here in Maumelle to where, again, I'm very worried about Maumelle Boulevard traffic getting clogged up again like we had there 4 years ago. We can't have that again because there's no other way to get out of Maumelle. There's no way we can do another entrance. So there's some thinking. We need to do some hard thinking, and a lot of it's going to be involved in getting this, I think, Metroplan in front of us. Were they going to be here the next meeting, Mr. Mayor, or was it going to be the second meeting?
I believe the plan is for them to be here at the next meeting.
At the next meeting?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, good. Because I think we need to have some input from him, because if Mr. Covington says, oh yeah, getting that 3rd entrance solved all your problems, you can build high-rise apartments and everybody get out of town during rush hour. If he says that, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with the high-density option, but we need somebody that understands these things, can kind of look at our situation and say, do we need to be careful about high-density housing and adding bodies that are going to be trying to get in and out of town during rush hour, or can we just trundle down the road and do whatever we want? So those are my comments, and when we get to those two resolutions, I will make a motion to delay those until at least the next meeting so that we can get input from Mr. Covington. I'll yield the floor here for any other comments.
Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see Director Grummer. Is Mr. Lyons available for a
He is.
question?
Jason, come on down.
I think this is fairly easy for you, sir. Director Grummer mentioned this in the previous meeting. There's been multiple references to high-density housing as it referred to the, was it Stony Heights? He was very clear that Stony Mountain. He was very clear that Stony Mountain is not a high-density housing as a planning department would define it, is it?
No, as a planning department, no. I mean, it's 3.5 acres, which pretty much all of our subdivisions in Maumelle.
3.5 units per acre?
3.5 units per acre, yes. So high density is when you start looking at 10 to 12 units or higher. So like an R3 density, think of Audubon Place. Even your apartments, let's say the Greens apartments over in North Little Rock, right off of Country Club, those would be actually considered about medium density, that 6 to 10, 12 units per acre. So it's really, it can be in the eye of the beholder of what high density looks like, but typical subdivision for us is 3 units per acre is R1 density. What this subdivision has is roughly 3.5 units per acre, and that's why they're also seeking that conditional use that the council will see later tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, let me get a clarification on that. It is termed high density though within that zoning category, is that correct?
Well, it's slightly above density that we have for R1. If you start looking at, let's say our PRDs are established pretty much in that 3.5 to 4 units per acre. So it's, again, it's still low density in the overall thinking of planning, in that you're under the 6 units per acre. For instance, the conditional use they're applying for in the small lot, which is the conditional use in R1, is for small lots. That could be up to 6 units per acre, and that would still be considered at the high end of low density, but right there getting towards the medium density of, say, an R2.
Okay. The lot size on these houses here, the way they're designed now for Stony Mountain, are they comparable to the houses in Cypress Bend? Is that it?
Yeah, you're talking about the subdivision off of White Oak Crossing?
Yes, sir.
It's going to be very similar. They're roughly 5,000 to 5,500 square feet.
Okay.
So that's about right, 1/10 of an acre, roughly. That's pretty common to what you see in Cypress Bend and what you're also seeing along that same corridor right there. These lots, when you compare them to North Point, West Point, Diamond Point, are just a little bit smaller. They have 50-foot frontages, roughly 100 to 120 foot in depth. So that 5,000 to 6,000 square foot, which is not all that uncommon in an R1 density.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. I've got several questions here. Oh, one of the biggest problem I have with this neighborhood is it's going to be accessed through Diamond Point there, through that very narrow area between two houses at the end of what is a cul-de-sac. I think I asked this last meeting, I can't remember the answer. Who actually owns that? Is there, and how wide is it?
So I believe you're talking about Track B, which is a little in between 173, 175 Diamond Point. It's 50-foot wide, and what they're proposing, basically, that is a residential right-of-way. What they're proposing is a 27-foot street, which is the common street. And if you look at the rest of Diamond Point Drive west of Emerald, that is what it is. It's a 50-foot right-of-way with a 27 back of curb to back of curb. As far as the ingress-egress, I'll leave that to City Attorney Thornton. We looked at that, and I believe there was 1 or 2 plats that said Track B was reserved for access. So, and then, of course, behind that, though, you still have that roughly 30, 40-foot wide of open space, which I believe is an ordinance later on in this meeting.
Now, if we were designing a neighborhood that would allow access to some new development at some point, if it was coming before you all, you would probably not like the setup that's there now.
Well, the point we're looking at that, why we granted an approval of it and we recommended approval via the planning commission was because the majority of the 244 lots referenced in Stony Mountain are gonna be exiting via the proposed collector, which would be Stony Mountain Drive, and then drops south into the Pinnacle Heights subdivision and then hits Ridgeland. We did that, we looked at that as the main egress. I believe Scott had done some previous stuff in it where of the 244 lots, roughly see maybe up to maybe 100 of them would access back down through Diamond Point just because of how the subdivision's laid out. It wouldn't be efficient for someone to drive all the way up, come around, a whole bunch of curves to hit a narrow spot in. So that's why we recommend approval, because most of the vast majority of the lots will be actually exiting through Ilias Cove, which goes into Pinnacle Heights, and then Ridgeland, which still has quite some growth allowed to it for a collector standard.
Yeah. Let me ask the council members, has everybody gone by and looked at that, where it's gonna connect in there through Diamond Point, and just to get an idea of where you think that's wide enough? Because I think there was a lawsuit back in, 2004, because the city actually turned that idea down back then.
Well, so what I believe, my understanding, and please, City Attorney Thornton, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken Norman was the developer at the time. He had I believe it was called Hunter Heights subdivision. The subdivision itself was approved, and actually that density was, I want to say 4.5 to 5 units per acre. It was rather ugly looking subdivision. It was all square and it only had the one egress, which was Diamond Point. What failed was he wanted a waiver to basically essentially have a private road go through the track B and across the open space and track. That was denied by, I believe, the city council and planning, because they wanted 60 foot at that point. So, and what as pertaining to the master street plan, if you don't mind me kind of going off here, what we looked at was, we did a traffic study at 3 locations along Diamond Point. And as you know, from Odom to Emerald, it is a collector, 60 foot right of way. The road is built to the collector standards. When you get past Emerald, even the plats show it, everything was platted as 50 foot right of ways. So a collector is 60 foot right of way. Now your back of curb to back of curb can be 27 feet, which those are. So if we were to go in and even have to retrofit to bring everything up to collector standards, that's 5 additional feet of property on each side of the road. And that would bring Diamond Point at that point to collector. Now, it was never platted that way. And if it was platted correctly, the 2 lots in question for next track B would have had 25 foot setbacks essentially on all frontages, as what you see in Country Club Arkansas and any other corner lots, with the exception of Cypress Bend, which we allow some 15 foot frontages on a side street. That's not the main frontage.
Okay. Have council members seen that? Have you all seen that? Can you raise your hand if you've seen it? I see a nod or two. Okay, 1. We've got, you've seen it? Okay. So we've got 2. I think everybody ought to go by and look at that before you vote yes on this. Because again, there's 3 items here, and if we pass them all, then we've given that up. We need to be careful on this, and we need to look after the residents.
And Councilmember Moses, if you don't mind me interjecting here.
Go ahead.
In defense of the developers, they have also, in that 50 foot, they have adjusted to move the roadway as far south as they can. There's a little more room on the south side, so they've pushed it as far south as they can to coincide, to give a little bit more room on I believe it's the 175 Diamond Point. And the residents there have come to all the meetings and whatnot, but the developer has pushed it as far south as it can. So when you think about right-of-way, a lot of times we want to think about the center line of the road is going right down the middle of the right-of-way, and that's not always the case. It's the kind of the path of least resistance, and that's what they're doing here. They're pushing it as far south as they can to give more room between their back of curb on the north and then the home. So they've I believe, adjusted maybe 7 to 10 extra feet by doing that.
Was there was there any encouragement for the developer to go ahead and buy one of those houses and just make a much bigger, better entrance?
That would be a question for the developer. I don't know if they did that or not.
One thing to note, let me get the city attorney. One thing to note though is if we built that to a collector, you'd have a road that was built as a collector down to a road that was built as a local road, back open to a road that was a collector. So just think about that as well. Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, Mr. Lyons, the master street plan for residential level local roads, does it give guidance on how many vehicle trips per day? They're supposed to.
I have to jog my memory a little bit. I know for I think it's roughly, I want to say around 2,000.
Could it be 2,500
That sounds about right.
average daily trips? I
And then
think that's what's
collectors
in-
are up to 5,000, I believe.
Yeah, that's what's in the memo. And you'd said that, the city did, traffic studies at a few points along Diamond Point.
Correct.
And then you said that Mr. Grummer also, looking at this proposed development, he estimated, I think you said, up to 100 homes, and I'm guessing those are gonna be in the eastern quadrant of the development,
Correct.
would be expected to use the Diamond Point to try to access the boulevard or wherever. Now, if you add up the existing traffic on that road, plus the anticipated traffic from those, no more than 100 or so homes in the eastern quadrant, is that still under 2,500 average daily trips?
Correct. The Diamond Point areas that we did the traffic studies, even with the added, and if the figure, that was, average figure used was 8.5 vehicle trips per day per lot. So if you think about a maximum of 100 units moving on to that area, you're adding about 820 to 850 car vehicle trips a day onto Diamond Point. That would still keep it under the maximum residential by about 500 or so roughly. So there's still capacity, is the best way to put it. There's still capacity on the residential portion right there. And then also when you look at the collector of Ridgeland, there's still capacity on Ridgeland as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Again, I think as a council, we're here to represent the residents that are in our ward and look out for their best interests as opposed to, I think that's top priority over developers and development. And we shouldn't be considering profit by developers or anything like that, so.
And Councilmember Mosley, to point one, if you don't mind me, Mayor.
No, you go right ahead.
From earlier on, you were talking about notifications of some of the residents not knowing. Being that there was a conditional use being used here, typically for a residential plat, it's just, you just notify the abutting property owners. What the applicant had to do in this case, because it was conditional use, was from the edge of their property, 300 feet out to everybody at their property. So essentially, everybody along Diamond Point, North Point, Breckenridge were notified via the 300 foot that there were public hearings to be held.
Okay.
So the notification was there actually above and beyond what a typical subdivision plat would be, because they were also seeking the conditional use, which the notification for a conditional use is very similar to a rezoning in nature. So it's 300-foot radius around the entire property.
Okay, thanks for mentioning that. I'd forgotten about that.
Anything else, Mr. Mosley?
Yeah, I've got something else here. Just give me a second.
While you're thinking of that, I think, of course, keep in mind, we do have different ordinances. We're talking about everything all together, but what's before us right now is the ordinance to amend the master street plan.
Right.
And so keep that in mind. I wanted to hit on this concept of calling this development high density. So if you will recall, there is a way to not, the applicants are requesting basically smaller lots for the homes. And if you look at the artwork or the drawing or the preliminary plat that's in there, you'll see, amusingly, it's all green, but you'll see a lot of green space in there. It is my understanding that it would be completely they could put less green space, less of these open areas, less of the aesthetically pleasing elements, and make the lots bigger to meet that code without any sort of conditional use or variance. We're often talking about how can development come in that looks better, that has this high-quality Maumelle standards and the like. So we've got all this green space and open space there, and then what they want to do is shrink those lots down a little bit. One of the things I know is you can go, and I don't know the details of what the request is compared to other areas. You can look at some of the areas like Carnahan Village, and these developments that have smaller lots are extremely popular, and there is a high demand among residents to move to areas where you don't have as much of the lawn to maintain. We're seeing the market shift toward people wanting these smaller lots, but we also want to keep it in the sort of high quality that Maumelle has, so that's keeping the green space around. It's not slamming a bunch of homes together and just sort of like factory rowing it. It's a more whole. I mean, you can look at that, and so hypothetically, they could increase the lot size and decrease the open green space without any sort of variance requests as it is. So it's a little bit, it's a lot of bit inaccurate to say that this is higher density because of the reasons I've said. Anyways, Mr. Mosley, did you figure out where you were?
Yeah, in fact, I'd ask Jason on your comments, sir, what's the topography there? Is it such that this is really the only way you could even put it in, or are there dips and valleys and rocks and things?
Well, you do have some elevation coming down, especially down in the southwest corner. So kind of going to that point, yeah, I think they're working with the topography as best they can, and I may leave that, if you don't mind, to the applicant. The engineers have obviously drawn it for a reason. So talking about the green space, obviously typical R1 or even a PRD only requires 8 to 15%. What they're showing is 30%. And also with that conditional use, in order to get the conditional use request, it's very specifically says for small lot that every lot should have green space. Now, there is green space pretty much behind every lot. I know it looks funny kind of right there around the phase 2 area, but there is about 5 to 10 feet of green space between those lots. So they've met that requirement and then some. And also they've had some other concessions to try to be better neighbors to the residents to the east, along Diamond Point, by removing 1 or 2 lots and just having more green space between. So they've been making some concessions there. And obviously with the conditional use, there is those concessions, and that's where the added green space and whatnot.
Okay, thank you. One of my questions is, eventually, there's going to be a connection to 365, and right now that parcel of land is actually accessed by coming from 365. Is that correct?
With this parcel, I believe it is. So kind of focusing on the master street plan portion of it. Ideally, in the long run, Stony Mountain Drive, which would be the collector in this proposal, would eventually hook into Trax Road. Now, Trax Road is a private road, private easement via the county, so that would have to be improved at a later date. And the grand scheme with the proposed collector would be going all the way to Settlement Road again. So Settlement Road would ultimately be the end for this one, and we've worked on with Scott did a real good job talking with the Perkins family, the Mooney families, and that's how we've realigned our proposals on other collectors and the arterial that we've talked about going out of the Stone Canyon subdivision on the north side of the tracks and having another connection to 365 there going, I believe it's Rocky Bottom Road. So that's in the grant. So again, we're not looking at something that's going to be built in a year or two with the roads. We're looking 5-10 years out at the grand scheme, because this is an area that has a lot of growth potential in the future for the various parties. So that's why we're looking at trying to get it laid out right now with new collectors and the arterial to get to 365 to make traffic easier. And in the long run, make it easier for residents that are coming out of the subdivision, not going south to Ridgeland, not going east to Diamond Point, but heading west and north and go up to 365 around the Palarm Creek area and such. So the grand scheme in the long run is to reduce the traffic that actually goes into the neighborhoods and get down to Odom, but push it more going west and north, and that's obviously going to be ideal.
But
as area
that may
goes.
not happen for 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, just like anything with, I mean, what we're looking at planning, comprehensive plans, that's what we're looking as the long term. So these may not happen, you know, immediate 2-3 years, but ideally in 5 years or 10 years, as other developers look at property, the Bradley property, Perkins, Mooney, any of those, if they want to develop something else, they're gonna have to look at how are they getting people in and out, how are they getting to 365, and get them out the most efficient way and not have the traffic clog that you talk about.
Okay. Who's gonna eventually pay for that, road improvement that goes to 365? Are the developers gonna pay for that, or is the city gonna get stuck with it?
Well, any developments, I mean, that would be on the developers if they want the development more. So if you look at, let's go back and look at Stone Canyon that was passed last year, Old Maumelle Road, they are gonna be doing, as they get to that part of the phase, Old Maumelle Road, they're gonna be a half road improvement that the developer will pay.
Okay, he'll pay.
Yeah.
But, we don't know at this point on Stony Mountain and all that, who's gonna pay for settlement road improvements? Because right now, that's kind of a gravel road, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, all that's gonna have to be improved, and typically that is done at the developer's expense, unless there's, let's say, a bond issue or something else that voters would have to approve, and I personally don't see that likely. It's gonna be more developer-driven, because they're gonna see, oh, we can develop here. Well, if we're gonna develop here, we're now gonna need to build these roads up to get approvals. So if they don't get approval of roads, or they don't improve the roads, nothing's gonna get built. Because they're also gonna have to make sure Trax Road is built to a certain standard, and that's, so, yeah, it'll be developers in the
So
end.
right now, it's kind of an unknown as to how that's all gonna play out. I think one last big question here. Oh, this is a city attorney here. I think I sent you a text the other day, kind of giving you a heads up. Sometimes my texts don't go through to you, because I never did hear back from you, but, I'm assuming that's the case. But, what obligation does the city have to provide county property access to Maumelle streets? Because that's what we're talking about doing here.
I didn't get your text, sir, so that's the reason I didn't respond to it.
Okay.
I believe Mr. Grummer said at the last, I think this is basically a question you had asked at the last meeting. I think Mr. Grummer said that my predecessor advised that we can't refuse access to a development in county property. We can't refuse them road access. I'm happy to look at, I know this is only on second reading tonight. I'm happy to look into that
Yeah,
more detail.
would you do that? I'd appreciate it.
That's basically your question, though?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure, of course.
That's all I've got, other than I will be making a motion to delay this stuff till, the other two, the two resolutions till the next meeting. This one here, we don't vote on tonight, so, thank you for indulging me but we need to understand what's going on over there, and you need to make an informed decision for your constituents, because they're gonna be affected. Thank you.
Councilmember Holt?
Give me just a second and I'll be brief. I'm trying to play catch up, Mr. Mayor. I have spoke to a builder, developer contractor this week, and I've also spoken to a resident about 3 or 4 weeks ago, a month before last, I think. I want to make sure, one of them was talking about that there was part of one of these developments was actually in Pulaski County. A man that owned it wanted, I guess he was wanting to sell it, had a buyer for it, but the residents, from their standpoint, were vehemently opposed to it. So I wanted to know, are we talking about that? Is that one of these two areas? And the second one, from the builder, that question was, they were involved big lots, small lots. And so I asked about, well, how small is small? We compared my own home to that area. He said, and I asked him, well, what ratio of small lots to the big lots will there be? And what are the small lots going to be used for? And he said he didn't really know for sure what. Is that too much to sort of try to find out if either one of these two things, I'm sort of lost in what I'm hearing, so if you'll fill me in. You made a statement at the last meeting that one of these hinged on whether or not the land was actually going to be annexed, if I've understood correctly. So where am I in this whole picture?
So one of the conditions we have laid out on the plat, and actually one of the conditions in the conditional use for this, is that the property must be annexed within 12 months, or meaning the developer needs to come forward as a voluntary annexation to the city for annexation into the city inside the 12 months. If they don't, then it falls back and they now have to follow the county regulations for this platting, for the plat itself. This is also, this subdivision, this sizes here have all been the same. I'm thinking maybe they were talking about the Stone Canyon subdivision off of 365 and Old Maumelle Road. I had I don't know if it was a builder, but a contractor asking about those, and that was originally planned, when it was originally approved, was gonna be smaller, was gonna be single-family detached, but there was also smaller lots that were gonna be townhomes, and that's the way it was originally approved, in late 2022, early 2023, I believe. And remember, last year they came, or actually, less than 6 months ago, they came back and they dropped the number of lots from over 400 down to 330 lots, and they went just full single-family detached. So that could be what they were thinking of when the original plat was preliminarily approved, was you had the bigger single-family lots mixed in with a bunch of townhomes, which would be your smaller 25, 30-foot lots. But what this subdivision is, it is in the county. It is actually bigger. It's actually bigger than what was previously approved as a plat back in 2005, 2006. Previously, it was only 40 acres. This is 65 acres, so there's three owners involved here, not just the one owner as there was before. But this one is all your typical, just a little bit smaller than your typical R1 lots.
Is there any kind of law that says how you have the condominiums for people that they're going to be smaller lots, so there's going to be more? I mean, so you get more people in there. Is there any kind of rule as to how many people can be put into one general area and be safe?
Well, that's where our zoning ordinance comes in. So your R1 zoning, your R2 zoning, your R3 zoning. Typically, if you're seeing townhomes, you're going to see those in an R2. So, upwards of 6 to 10 units per acre, or R3, which is your much more dense 12 plus units per acre. What we see here is a single-family detached. So it's when you get to the townhomes, the dense townhome development is where you start seeing more density. But that also varies by city. Some cities, we have an R1, R2, R3, and PRD. Other cities have an R1 through R6, depending, and that's all regarding the density of the housing. But here, this is not much bigger than an R1 density.
And to clarify, we're talking about single-family homes. We're not talking about condos. We're not talking about apartments or high-rises. What's on that? Well, actually, what we're talking about is the master street plan. But the proposed development that is single-family homes.
Single-family detached.
Detached homes, yes. So
That's
not condos, townhomes, duplexes, triplex, just single-family homes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, what's the square footage on these houses?
Is it 1,200? Yeah, I think the minimum, so that's the other question, that's the other, in the small lot for a conditional use, they could have gone as low as 800. They have put it in there, in the general notes on the plat to be minimum 1,200 square feet. So it's bigger, it's 400 square feet bigger than what even the conditional use would allow, which was 800, so they're going bigger. They're going 1,200 plus, 1,200 to 1,500.
You're confusing me now.
So with the conditional use, they could have asked to go as low as 800 to 1,000 square feet for a minimum home size. What they are requesting is going to be a minimum of 1,200, and that's on the plat notes and probably going to be on the conditional use. So they're actually going 1,200 square feet to 1,500 square feet roughly in that range, which is within 5 to 10% of what the adjacent homeowners are as well, with Diamond Point, Northridge, and those existing subdivisions. So they're right in line with their neighbors.
Okay, this conditional use would be, is it for lot size or is it for square footage?
Well,
both?
so it's both. The conditional use allows variances in the size. So what they're doing is, the reason they're having to go for conditional use is because they are roughly a half acre in density larger than what the R1 standard is. R1 standard is 3 units per acre, they're at 3.5 units per acre. So because they are a half unit bigger per acre, they have to request a conditional use.
Okay. And we don't have to approve that conditional use. There's no obligation.
That, like every other decision, that is up to the city council to vote on.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right, this will be on third reading. At the next council meeting, we'll move on to the second reading of ordinance 1115, amending code concerning site plan review. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled ordinance number 1115, an ordinance to amend certain Maumelle City Code provisions concerning site plan review and for other purposes.
Open the floor for discussion. Seeing none, this will be on third reading at the next city council meeting. That brings us to the second reading of ordinance 1116, amending the city code concerning PCDs. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled ordinance number 1116, an ordinance to amend certain Maumelle City Code provisions concerning the planned commercial district, PCD zoning district, and for other purposes.
I'll go ahead and open the floor for discussion. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I was going to lead off tonight by asking Mr. Mazzoni how comfortable he was with the changes that the planning department made to this ordinance. This is that zoning ordinance that goes with that land use ordinance. The land use ordinance was passed, but we had sent the zoning back because we were not comfortable that we weren't going to get a lot of apartments in. We needed some safeguards like percentage of residential versus commercial or something. That's what we were shooting for to begin with, and we didn't get that, but we've got Mr. Grummer put in there that there's a conditional use that we have to approve to have residential mixed, and then he put in several or quite a few fairly subjective items. And I met with Mr. Grummer, just tried to get an idea of how easily we can utilize those things to prevent a big apartment complex. And I'm still not really comfortable. I think I still look at this as if we approve this, if you approve it, you're voting for apartments. You're going to eventually, I guarantee you're going to get apartments. But I do appreciate Mr. Grummer's meeting with me because I feel a little bit better about what he was trying to do. I want to check with Mr. Mazzoni. Is anybody still uncomfortable, or you guys,
I'm a little uncomfortable with you saying that anyone who votes for this votes for apartments. I'd encourage anyone here to read it, and anyone at home, you can find it on our website. It's just false. That's a lie. Pardon me, I'm not allowed to say that. That is not an accurate representation of what this is.
So what you're saying is there's no way that we're going to get apartments on these commercial properties?
I'm saying that this ordinance, read it. Are you saying that there's a provision in here you think it will allow apartments to be
Well,
here?
it talks about residential housing, mixed use.
Well, I know everything is apartments to you. Single-family homes are not apartments or high-density housing. Mixed use is not apartments. It's a different thing. You can't just call everything the same thing. It's inaccurate, and it's deceptive.
Okay, well, there's a lot of people that don't understand this, and I don't understand it
Well,
very
and they're
well.
more confused when people call things that they're not.
Well-
So mixed-use development is developments that you see that have commercial on the bottom, right? And so we have worked hard to do that. You can look at this and read all the safeguards that are in there. And we can have a debate as to whether or not they're good enough or not. But to just say it's apartment, let me ask this, Councilmember Mosley, are you in favor of mixed use in any form or fashion? Or are you just categorically opposed to it? Because I think it would be, if you're just opposed to it in general, say that so that people understand what it is that you're opposed to rather than continually nitpicking at everything.
Basically, the residents of this city don't want apartments.
I-
And so I'm doing the best I can to try to prevent that from happening. And if I'm not comfortable with something, and I'm afraid that that's what it's going to event to, I'm going to vote no. And I hope other people would too, because if we're trying to go to apartments and very high-density housing, I don't think it's what the residents want. So I'm trying to get comfortable. You're making that statement as helpful about it's not going to lead to apartments.
That was the whole reason we sent it back, which is one of the things
Well,
that I concurred with in the council, is we want to make sure this doesn't allow apartments, that it requires commercial, and not just token commercial, but meaningful, real, substantial commercial. And I welcome everyone to tear this thing apart, and if you think it allows what we're saying it does, let's change it, because the areas that we're talking about are areas that we do not want commercial, right? Or, pardon me, that we do not want apartments. We don't want apartments in those areas. And so it's much more productive and constructive to look at this and examine whether, and planning has done that, the city attorney, the planning commission. It came to the council the first time and we sent it back saying we need more assurances that we're not gonna get apartments, right? And so no one wants that. Tear this apart, and if you can find out how it allows apartments, by golly, let us know, and I will be the one to champion the change, because we do not want apartments in the areas that we have for PCD, right? We're on the same page there.
Okay.
I do think, and what I'm in favor of that I think you're not in favor of, is actual mixed-use developments in the areas that are PCD, that are specifically commercial, but that thrive in the modern economy, in the modern ways we're seeing local communities do well, is through that hybrid of commercial and residential. But no, if anyone thinks if you can brainstorm some crazy scenario that allows apartments here, let us know, and I'll be the one pushing to stop it or tear the thing up immediately, because none of the staff or anyone that has worked on this that I know of wants apartments in these areas at all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Lyons, can I ask you a question, sir? This, I guess we'll be around the bush. We're talking about town center area, right?
Yeah, for the most part,
Although
it's the
there's
town's.
PCD all over the city.
I don't say there's a lot of PCD. I mean, if you look at where all the PCDs are, they're along our major arterials, where you're typically not gonna see single-family residential. And of course, it is the town center, and that's why we are focused more on that town center area, because that's also where you have your Club Manor pathway that's going in.
Right.
And that's what everybody wants to see. Now, this is what you're seeing in a lot of places. In a PCD, you don't want to see single-family detached either. It makes no sense. And I think one of Scott's issues was, you could put parcel off any PCD lot into 6, 7, 8 different, fast food lots. And I know traffic is a big concern. Well, you're going to have just as much traffic, if not more traffic, on, let's say, 8 parcels in a 15-acre tract of fast food, drive-throughs, curb cuts, everything, versus a mixed use, live, work, play. It's mobility, everybody's together, and they can walk back and forth, so you're taking your vehicle trips down at that point as well, and that's the whole point of it. So, and I will say, I would strongly encourage the council members to also look at what HUD is coming down with as far as some zoning updates. So, I mean, we're talking about high density, and there is some stuff coming down from HUD that's gonna look at higher density even in the suburbs. So that's something, obviously, that's a concern for this council, and could potentially be coming down. So I would highly encourage all the council members to look at that, the mayor. So that's just stuff to think about. But what this update on the PCD is doing is, the first thing you have to remember is PCD does not allow residential by right, okay? It's gonna be required as a conditional use, meaning planning commission has to approve it, the community will have a community meeting on it, and then the city council will have to approve it as well. So there's 3 different steps where you're gonna get all the community input. You're gonna have the community meeting, that was signed into the new ordinance last year. You're gonna have the planning commission subcommittee, planning commission meeting, and you're gonna have a city council meeting. And it's all gonna be because of the conditional use requirement that would be in a PCD. So, yeah, you will see, it's just gonna be by nature, if you have commercial on the bottom, you're probably gonna see a little bit more density, but you're not gonna see high rises. It's all gotta come with commercial. So, the developer's gotta make it viable, so you're not gonna see apartment complexes all by themselves. You're gonna see commercial bottom, you're gonna have people that they could be a small business owner, opens up a business on the ground floor, and they have a live-work unit above them. So that's ideally what you're looking at when you're thinking of mixed-use development. You want as much commercial as possible, but being in a town center, you want it also to be walkable, and that's where the residential component comes in. So, you're not gonna see, I would never be for it. I know Scott's opinion on it, we don't want high-density apartments in town center or any other PCD. We want to see a nice mixture of mainly and primarily, and that's the key word, primarily in these PCD zones. And that's the way this ordinance is written, is primary focus is on commercial. And that's going to be on us, the community, the planning commission, and the city council in the end of it.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Gronwald?
So I feel like we've talked about mixed use several times, but for me, it always helps to have like an actual example. So let me know if I'm thinking about this correctly or if I'm off a little bit. But if anybody's been to the Target on University, where some of those sandwich shops are, Nukes, that's mixed use. So that's commercial on the bottom. Like you said, there might be offices on the top. There could be maybe a few condos, but we've talked about that before, how beneficial that would be for economic development and to draw people in and bring, businesses. One thing that the residents do want is more eateries, more things to do, and we can't meet the needs of the residents if we're not willing to have something like this that's mixed use. And I also want to kind of point out too that give accolades and kudos to the entire Maumelle staff and our economic developers and everybody, is that they go to conferences to learn what other cities are doing. And I think they've kept a really close eye on what's happening, how these other cities are drawing people, not only people, but businesses and things in. And I think this is the way to go. But I just wanted to kind of clarify what mixed use is, because it seems like there's a little bit of confusion on what that is.
Councilmember Mosley?
Jason, for example here, if, the lower levels have to be commercial or actually industrial, but, that's not what I'm getting into, but what would prevent a development from just having around the bottom, having some at the front that faces the public, and then behind that have just lots of apartments? What would prevent that?
Well, what would prevent it would be actions of the planning commission, staff, or city council. Now, you could have some apartments in the middle. Reading the ordinance that's being proposed, all the street frontages, including the private drive, so would require full commercial with a focus on commercial. Now, you could put some density in the middle, which is not really going to be seen, but at the same point, your developer is also going to have to look at, do they have enough parking? They're going to have parking requirements. Is it viable for them to do that? How are they going to get in and out? Are they going to, because most developers in this area are probably not going to want to build a parking garage for apartments. So you've got to look, they could have apartments in between, or townhomes or row houses. Something similar to look at, Ms. Grunwald, you were talking about, you go into Conway, look along Harkrider, right there at Hendricks. Same thing, you've got they actually are dorms, so that you can think of more high density, because of dorm rooms are tiny. But they have the commercial on the bottom, and then 3 floors above it are all are residential dorms for Hendrix College. And then also right along Harkrider, they have the row houses. Again, that's roughly 12 units on a half-acre lot. So it's all how it's done, and that's where our development plan comes in. And again, it's gonna be reviewed consistently by all different factors. What we've really liked is that with the community meetings, we get the community input. We get to talk with the community, and we get their input. We have a very talented planning commission, and we have a very good city council here to review it. So we've got 3 levels of review, plus the staff level looking at it. So I can't say, no, there's not gonna be any apartments, hidden behind the commercial, but I don't think you're gonna find the density that might be, I guess, scary. That would be, we got scary apartments coming up out of the middle with commercial on the front. What this is doing is saying, we want to focus on commercial, and if there ends up being some residential apartments, tucked in the middle with amenities, park amenities, well, that's actually not gonna be a bad thing in the grand scheme, because they're gonna be there. They're not gonna be getting onto Club Manor, they're not gonna be getting onto Maumelle Boulevard, they're not gonna be getting onto Odom. They're gonna walk out of their apartments, and they're just gonna walk to the closest eatery right there on the ground floor. And they can walk back and forth, they can go get a bite to eat, they can go back to a pool, or whatever the attraction is for an apartment that might be tucked into the middle of that development. But it's not gonna be the 20, 25 units per acre, because most of our PCD zones, you don't have the room for it. Because you think about, each unit is gonna require 1.5 to 2 parking spaces per unit, and there's just not the room for that when you start factoring in commercial development, which is gonna require parking. So your commercial is gonna be the dominant feature, and residential is gonna be the secondary.
Okay, thank you, and I thank you for fielding a lot of questions tonight down in the weeds. You probably didn't anticipate that.
That's right.
Thank you for doing that.
Mr. City Attorney?
I was just gonna say that, the provisions that Mr. Lyons was talking about are on the bottom of page 4, of ordinance 1116. That, coverage requirement, the exterior lot coverage requirement. And then when I was looking at it, I realized that, City Council had added some text by motion at the last meeting, didn't get in there. I can read that if you'd like, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome to. I believe it was added in by motion
Yes, it was.
at the last one, because it was actually in the version that was adopted by the planning commission.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome to read it.
So this subsection, capital A, is talking about exterior lot coverage, which means that we're talking about a 100% commercial requirement for ground floor lots that abut a public or a private street. And then the additional text gives an option to waive that, and I'll read it in just a second. Gives an option for the city council to waive that if it wishes, based on unique characteristics of the property. So it would read as follows, at the very end of where it says section 94-448 period. It would read, the planning commission may recommend that the city council waive this 100% requirement for a development due to specific characteristics unique to the property, so long as the development meets the remaining requirements, guidelines, and criteria. And Mr. Grummer had suggested we add that just because inevitably there are going to be some lots that will have unique features that make it impossible to make it probably commercially viable. But in any case, it gives the city council that option.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Councilmember Gardner?
Just very quickly, since this will be on third reading at the next meeting, can we make sure that ordinance 1116 has the correct page 4 in the packet for the next meeting? Thank you.
All right, before we move on, Councilmember Mosley, I owe you an apology. I lost my cool and said that you had lied and were deceptive. And while I don't think your description was the most accurate, I do not think that you have any will to deceive or to lie, and I shouldn't have said that, and I want to apologize before we even move on to the next agenda item. So,
Thank you for that, Mayor. I've been elected by my folks to do and pursue certain things and to dig into things, and I know I catch a lot of grief for doing so, but that's what I've been asked to do, and so, but I appreciate that. I would never lie to deceive or whatever here, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of things and get some facts out. Thank you.
thank you, sir. That concludes unfinished business, so that'll be on third reading at the next city council meeting. We'll move on to new business. The first item of new business is Resolution 2024-05, approving Metro Little Rock Alliance contract. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2024-05, a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute an economic development services contract with the Metro Little Rock Alliance and for other purposes.
Outstanding. So this is our annual contract that we have with MLRA. We have Jack Thomas here, and of course Courtney Dunn. I'm not sure if Courtney wanted to say anything, but Jack, come on down.
Courtney, you're certainly welcome to join me if you want, but don't blame me if you don't. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Really appreciative of your time this evening. I hope to be brief, but hope to be thorough in terms of providing an update from our 2023 initiatives, while also outlining 2024 initiatives as well as services to the city of Maumelle. So first, want to start with results from 2023. In 2023, our team closed 11 projects that represent 2,302 new jobs for Central Arkansas, $131 million in new payroll, and $387 million in new capital investment for the region. So I think it goes without saying, I think most folks here in the room tonight understand this, but no matter where we land a project in the region, whether it's in Little Rock at the port or in North Little Rock, in Galloway, wherever it may be, it benefits Maumelle, benefits all of us. So from an economic development marketing standpoint, in 2023, Maumelle was represented at 16 different industry trade shows and site location consultant conferences. We'll continue a marketing schedule that includes representation at 15 industry trade shows and site consultant events in 2024. To support participation in those events, to get folks like Courtney to be able to have incentive to participate, the Metro Little Rock Alliance is providing due-paying members with reimbursements proportionate to the level of dues paid. Maumelle received last year a reimbursement of $1,000 for registration for economic development marketing events and conferences, and will again be offered that $1,000 stipend for registration in 2024. In terms of additional marketing initiatives, we featured two Maumelle companies, Kimberly-Clark and Tractor Supply, as part of our Regional Executive Voice digital marketing campaign in 2023. Retail initiatives, so this is something that's been important to the group, certainly important to folks in Maumelle. Courtney is leading a retail attraction committee for our MLRA partners to market Maumelle to regional and national retail developers and deal makers. In January, just a couple months ago, MLRA sponsored a booth at ICSC, which is the nation's leading retail trade shows, for regional partners to be able to connect with some of those developers and industry experts. Business retention and expansion services. So we work in tandem with all of our MLRA partners, Courtney and others across the region, to facilitate business retention and expansion visits and data collection efforts. Of course, what happens here in Maumelle is important, but it's what's important to employers is what the regional landscape is in terms of competitiveness, what other employers are doing to attract talent and things of that nature. So we've got a few different initiatives this year that will help solidify those efforts. One is the establishment of a regional manufacturing council of manufacturing executives from across the region. Another is a regional wage and benefit survey that we're organizing to provide data to employers on what's competitive. This was something that we last did in 2019. Clearly, a lot's changed at the macro level since 2019, but certainly at the micro level too. You look at a lot of the employers that have entered the market since 2019, and it's something that we need to update. Customized data and reporting. As part of MLRA, Maumelle has access to EMSI, Lightcast, and Dun & Bradstreet research tools This provides our partners with the ability to answer complex questions from prospects and site consultants as well as developers. We're also underway on a subscription with M-Plan to be able to better communicate the economic impact of projects that locate in the region. Maumelle, of course, as part of MLRA, will be able to run custom scenarios as part of this software. Economic development training, so we host several no-cost economic development training courses for MLRA partners. We did one that was on economic development sales training and attracting development and attracting companies and site consultants to the area. We hosted retail attraction training in 2023, and then in 2024, we'll be bringing one of the leaders in this space back to Central Arkansas for a training on business retention and expansion. In terms of participation in cooperative marketing events, MLRA conducts several different events throughout the course of the year to be able to market to site location consultants across the country. These folks are heavily concentrated in Dallas, Atlanta, Greenville, South Carolina, and Chicago. We just got back from Chicago 2 weeks ago, where we had meetings with 7 firms, some of the top site consultants in the country. We had 6 meetings in Atlanta and Greenville in February of 2023, and hosted about 25 site consultants at an event in Dallas last fall. So a few other things, just very briefly. Also, as part of MLRA, Maumelle has access to prospect liaison services, so help completing requests for information that come in, hosting site visits, negotiating with prospects in terms of closing economic development deals, site visit assistance, announcement planning and execution, and all the things that go into the economic development process. So the last thing that I'll mention is what I started with, and that's just the regional nature of our work as a group. You've heard, I'm sure you've seen in the news and other places, the work of the Little Rock Chamber to assemble a super site at the Port of Little Rock, where we hope to be able to attract a generational type project that'll create 1,000+ jobs, et cetera. We're making progress on that. We're not quite there yet, but hope to be there to assemble that site. We've already got a lot of interest in it. And I mentioned that clearly that impacts Little Rock, but also, of course, Maumelle for all the regional nature that I mentioned as I began this morning. So happy to answer any questions that you guys have. It's been a great year, and hopefully this year will carry the momentum that we had in 2023.
All of that, and Maumelle could be a member for the low price of $5,128, plus we can get $1,000 in reimbursement. Any
there you go,
any questions, comments, discussion? If not, I entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-05. Motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you for coming out, Jack.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate everything that y'all are doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next item of business is the Resolution 2024-09 approving a conditional use permit. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas. A resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2024-09. A resolution to approve a conditional use permit for the Stony Mountain subdivision and for other purposes.
Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, this is the first of the 2 resolutions that are in the council packet tonight to move that Stony Mountain neighborhood closer to fruition. This is the one that would allow the more dense housing than the city code currently allows. And what I want to do is make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we delay or postpone this or table this resolution for 1 week until Mr. Covington's had a chance to visit with us and we can get some idea about perhaps our traffic situation for the long run and that sort of thing. So I hereby make a motion to table this for 1 week.
I've got a motion to table this for 1 week. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. This is, I'd point your attention to sort of the last full whereas on page 2 that lists the, planning commission's recommended, conditions, the conditions that are there. Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. Lyons, when we were talking about this under the heading of the master street plan, we had mentioned minimum square footage of 1,200. And in fact, the plat note shows 1,200. My notes from Mr. Grummer from the planning commission said 1,000. And that's why I put 1,000 on the conditional use. I can't remember which was correct.
Well, I think the notes on a file plat would maybe take precedence
Okay.
on this, in this case, but, I'll let you.
A
decide
plat
best way to
was
proceed.
approved for, a preliminary plat was approved for 1,200, and that would bind the developer.
Well, if it's 1,200 on the plat, then I'd feel more comfortable if the conditions in the, resolution also said 1,200, but are these the conditions that the planning commission recommended? And if so, are we permitted to change that, or do we think it's a scrivener's error?
Mr. Holloway made a good point. The 1,000 square foot is actually the minimum required in an R1. And if you remember in our earlier discussion, with this small lot provision as a conditional use, the developer could go down to 800. So this sets at 1,000, which is the minimum for R1, and the developer has already said that he wants to build at 1,200 plus. So I think the condition is fine. It meets the R1, the typical R1 requirements. So it sets the parameters as an R1 subdivision versus a smaller lot, other than just a little smaller lot size, but the house size remains to the R1 standards. So I think the 1,000 square foot may be okay. And the plat itself says 1,200, and that's what's going to be in their BOA.
For those with Hawkeyes, if you look at Exhibit A, it is note 16. It says minimum house size will be 1,200 square feet. Hang on, pardon me, Councilmember Williams?
I'm sorry, I forget. I'm satisfied with 1,000, nothing less than that.
1,000 in the resolution
the
because the
resolution.
preliminary plat says 1,200 minimum. Okay. Is there any additional discussion on resolution 2024-09? Councilmember Mosley?
What has happened to that Pinnacle Heights subdivision? Is that thing still underway?
The initial phase is, as you know, they've built the road in there with the little roundabout and the first initial cove. From there, it's hard to say what the developer's gonna do right now, but it's sitting there with the phase 1 finished, just waiting on a finalized plat to be filed with the city clerk, or county clerk, excuse me.
Somebody said there's a big for sale sign that the developer changed his mind or something.
I have not been out there, so I can't say yay or nay on that one. I mean, we can go out and look and see. I'm not sure if it's just a for sale that he's selling the lots, potentially, because there's about 12, 13 lots that are ready to go right now, or whether it's for the full subdivision. I can't answer that question, I'm sorry.
Would that affect the road that would go through there? I mean, they're using a road that would be developed in Pinnacle
Well,
Heights to go to this new Stony Mountain.
So the road is already in.
It's already in?
Yeah, that road is already in. They will connect to it from the north, coming in with the collector standard.
All right, and so that's completed.
Correct.
Yeah, again, folks, I don't think that area to go through there to access that on Diamond Point is just not wide enough. We need to vote that down, tell them to come back with something better on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, sir. I think it's important to point out that by right, they could ask for a much larger subdivision with more homes in typical R1 fashion. And here they are coming in asking for less lots, but they're asking for that conditional use because they're putting in more green space and a prettier neighborhood. So I just think it's important to point that out, that by right, they could build a much larger neighborhood if they wanted to.
Let me add to that. It's currently in the county. And we've already heard that we can't prohibit them from connecting. They could remain in the county and throw up apartments. There's nothing in our code that prohibits apartments in unincorporated parts of Maumelle. So not only that, but they by right could do that. Don't get any harebrained ideas. So anyways, if there's nothing further, I'd entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2024-09.
So moved.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no.
No. Can we do roll call?
Certainly. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
No.
Councilmember Grunwald? Yes. Councilmember Gardner?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams? Yes. Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
Motion carries. That brings us to resolution 2024-10, authorizing the mayor to execute a conveyance. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2024-10, a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute a conveyance and for other purposes.
All right, thank you. I've asked the city attorney to introduce this one and explain what it's about.
Yes, state law requires, when the city grants land conveyances, we have to do it by written resolution. And the proposed road that connects Diamond Point to what is called Norma Lane crosses a small strip of common property. It's owned by the city, including a city path, a trail. And so if it's going to be built over the city's property, there has to be a conveyance.
Open the floor for discussion.
Motion to approve resolution 2024-10.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, no.
No. And could we do roll call again, please?
Certainly. Hang on, let me get you set up here. There we go.
Councilmember Mosley?
No.
Councilmember Grunwald?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner?
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
Motion carries. With that, that concludes unfinished and new business. And so just really quickly, for mayor's comments, at the next council meeting on Monday, stand by for a briefing of the eclipse and kind of what the city has going on, and maybe the chamber will be there. I probably should have secured that with Kelly back there. But we'll kind of let you know what the city is doing and planning and different levels of preparedness at the next city council meeting, which is only 1 week away. And then I briefly wanted to talk about the rain event that we had on March 14th. I'm sure many of y'all know we had over 4 inches of rain in those few hours. To put that into comparison, the average monthly rainfall here is 5.25 inches. So we had almost a month's worth of rain drop in a short period of time. We experienced flooding in sort of some of the typical places. The timbers were hit pretty bad. That's the apartments behind the police and fire station there off of Murphy. But I think it was, we can't prevent the rain. We can do what we can do to get the water moving and flowing. our system is just not going to be able to, no matter what we do, gonna be able to handle that amount of rain, because we had flooding in places all over town, not just in there. And our system will never, absent, hundreds of millions of dollars, be prepared for heavy rainfall in such a short period of time. But it's encouraging when we see city staff and the community jumping in at times like this. I know that, just for example, Scott Grummer had received a call from a resident that we've had flooding at, and was back there working with them, trying to resolve that issue, or at least get video and identify it. Of course, we had police and fire were out doing stuff. The fire department did a remarkable job using flat bottom boats to escort residents out of the timbers in the areas that they couldn't just get into their car and drive away. Because some of those areas had water move cars, pick up cars and move them down the road and water or through the parking lot. It was especially fun to be in communication with Deb Roush, my chief of staff, who was out there panicking about everything, to the point that, for anyone that knows Deb, knows exactly what I'm talking about. But to the point, and folks like Parks and Rec, we opened up the community center. We commissioned senior services vans to try and get folks to out of the rain and the water, so Parks jumped in. Deb, of course, was orchestrating this, actually got out to Walmart and got them to donate blankets for some of the families that were cold and wet, so thank you to Walmart. As I was going around some of the areas the following day and talking to residents, there were a number of residents who were out, helping their neighbors, and so it wasn't just city staff. It was neighbors helping neighbors, city staff doing that. Public Works the next day, as I was out, had trucks continually going through the areas that were hit, looking for debris or things that they could pick up and ensure wasn't clogging things up. So it was a special shout out to, there was one family that had an elderly person in a wheelchair and young children. We got them put up in a hotel, to the point that I was calling hotel owners, trying to get them to give us rooms, couldn't get a hold of anyone. So special shout out to Deb, who probably won't like that I say this, but who actually paid for a family out of her own pocket to make sure that they were put up for the evening. But that just goes to show how much people jump in. I wish I could stop the rain or magically make things drain, but it's comforting knowing that when those times happen, that there's a whole field of people who are jumping in and helping. So shout out to all the folks that helped out. That's all I had for mayor's comments, council member comments. Councilmember Gardner.
Just to kind of echo what you had just said, I was hoping to talk with Director Hogan tonight. I don't think he's here. It might be helpful at some point in the future for department reports to have him kind of give an update on some of those problem areas. I'm sure you probably all have heard from multiple residents in your own respective wards about difficulties they had. Mike has been very responsive in answering questions for me personally. And I think it would be good for him to kind of talk about some of those trouble areas that we continually have issues with, that continually pop up, just to talk about what maybe we could do in the future. And first, I agree with what you said. This was I hate to say unprecedented, I don't like that word, but it's one of those things where I agree, you would spend hundreds of millions of dollars to try to prepare for what we had that night. Tremendous amount of water in a short period of time. So, but it would be nice to chat with Director Hogan and let him, share where some of those trouble areas were, because Public Works was out early. I saw them at 7 a.m. cleaning streets where debris had washed through. So
and really,
they did a good job. But
a briefing on drainage would probably be best tackled by two different folks. Mike and his crew are the boots on the ground. Some of the more planning level stuff has been Scott Grummer's baby since he was my staff assistant, and just latched on because of events like this and his certain frustrations experienced there. So getting them both in the room to kind of talk about it from different angles would be
And we recall we changed our ordinance a few years ago for drainage and actually required new developments to have an increased amount of drainage.
I don't know, I think it went from a 10-year event to a 20-year event. Even with the increases, if those were put into place, I don't think it still isn't going to do that. One of the things we have been focusing on is not just the drainage systems, but what happens when you get your 100-year floods or your 500-year floods. How are we thinking about sheet flowing of water? What do we do when the system gets surpassed? Do we still provide an outlet, or is that outlet someone's front room and they're just going to be underwater? So it's the stuff we're looking at. Absent a time machine, we can't go back and undo certain things. But Councilmember Holt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a comment about tonight as an example of us conducting business. I know a lot of the times during our exchange, the discussion, I admit, becomes tiresome, trying our patience. After a while, I almost just disconnect. I can't keep up with everything that's being said and make any sense out of it at all. But as we've seen over the years, this is my 9th year now, and we've had ordinances come along, and they're good ordinances, and then somewhere along the way we get a request for a deviation or something a little different, and something a little different, and sometimes it winds up being different from what we ever approved to begin with. So I wish we had a little bit better way of having some advanced detailed information about this. We're asked to approve things that is millions of dollars affecting thousands, hundreds and hundreds of people's lives and things. So it's trying to me, I think we make our meetings sometimes more difficult for ourselves than we should be. Maybe there's no other way. I don't know. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying perhaps if we could look at ourselves as to how we do what we have to do. I think that we're asked to do an awful lot in a very short period of time that affects a lot. I can't, whatever. I'll leave that alone. So that's my point.
Thank you, sir. Just a reminder, the council always has the prerogative to table things and has shown to do that sometimes and not other times. And so if there's not enough information, or sometimes if there's information overload, it was, quite frankly, Jason, who's not the department head, sat up here and was able to throw more data and analysis at us than we typically even think about at this level. But it's reassuring to know that not only is the department head thinking on those levels, running those tests, but folks in that department are able to articulate the amount of analysis and stuff that goes on. The council always has the ability to table things, though, and so use that when appropriate.
Right.
Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I had 2 items here, but I've forgotten the first one here. But I agree with Mr. Holt there. It would be nice to occasionally have something about coming soon. We're going to be working on this or that or the other. That's something that's very, very monumental, and not just get hit with it. But like the mayor said, we have the ability to table things until we feel comfortable with them, and that's what I was hoping we'd do tonight, but we didn't do it. So, I mean... So anyway, the thing I wanted to talk about is I got a phone call today from a lady that's known here in Maumelle for her volunteer activities and things like that. And she got attacked by a pit bull dog on Saturday over in Victoria Circle. And I went over to animal control today, and our animal control officer is very good with people like me, and he was very forthcoming with information, gave me packets of all kinds of things, and he wanted to let it be known that there was more than just a pit bull dog bite in the last week. Apparently there's been 3 dog bites, all that were kind of tough. One of them was a little girl that stuck her finger through a fence and the dog bit her finger off. Another one was a dog got into another dog's backyard and the dogs whose yard it was killed the other dog. So they're all graphic pictures and things here, but in this case here, this is those first two were things where somebody antagonized a dog. One of them was a German Shepherd, another one was kind of a mixed dog. Those were antagonized things where something came into its territory and it reacted. This one here was this was where a dog went out of its way to attack somebody. The details are is the lady jogs through Maumelle and was jogging through, entered Victoria Circle, and there was a pit bull sitting on the front porch of one of the houses. And as it turned out, it had been not up to good things already, and the animal control had already been called. But that dog on the front porch turned and saw her little dog and just immediately ran toward him, attacked the little dog. It survived. It's got a drainage tube in its neck. It has ears mangled. It has stitches in its mouth and I think on its nose. The owner of the dog, the lady, she suffered some bruises and scratches. She apparently was not actually bitten. The dog apparently went after her dog. So she's actually said she's going to come before council and talk about this. She wasn't prepared to do so tonight. Her dog needs 24-hour day attention because of the drainage tube, and so she's missing work. She's in the medical field. And so anyway, this is another pit bull dog bite that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't lifted the ban. We've had four, and when they attack, they seem to do some pretty good damage. So I keep wondering when the council is going to come to their senses and say, no, this was a failed experiment. Let's go back. So I'm not going to say anything more tonight. I'm going to let her, whenever she feels like coming to visit with us, let her tell her story, and we can consider that again. She actually gave me her tennis shoes, which had her dog's blood all over them. I elected not to bring them in and wave them around tonight. So it was a brown pit bull that lived on Trevino over there, just right across the street from Victoria. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If I could follow up on that, first of all, the heart always goes out to all three of the families affected. One lost a dog, another child lost a portion of their finger, and then, of course, the incident that Councilmember Mosley was talking about with the pit bull on the run. The most frustrating thing from our perspective is this is actually a dog that had been at large twice recently. So we had cited and said, hey, this dog is on the loose. And I want to say it was 2 times before this, like maybe the 2 prior days, 2 immediately prior days. So I was talking with the city attorney about, this is an instance where we have an animal that's at large, and we need to look at the code to see how can we hold a dog, can we impound your dog on the second time that it's loose in a short period of time, right? Like if it's loose on a Friday, and I'm just making up the days, if it's loose on a Friday and we return it to you on a Friday and then we find it's loose on a Saturday, do we just let it go? This is we've really tried to crack down on what this idea of these nuisance animals, and so it's frustrating because I don't know that we actually have a tool to stop that. If we give now, after the dog bite incident, it's different because it rises to a different threshold and the code allows us to do that. So I was talking with the city attorney if there's some way we can do something in these cases where we know something is about to happen. I don't know that there was any indication on the other 2 at-larges that the dog was going to do this. I don't think there was anything like that I know of, but so y'all want to advance, stay tuned at some point in time for us to try and figure something out to propose to give animal control the tools in situations like this to maybe prevent it from happening. And it's very rare that you have an animal at large so frequently, but not unheard of. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, that was something I was gonna mention, but I forgot.
I'm glad I stole your thunder.
And yeah, you stole my thunder, that's a good one, but I'm glad you brought it up, because I got to thinking about that after I visited with Chris over at Animal Control, that it's almost like some of these mass shootings where somebody's been mentally off and everybody's been telling everybody that somebody's gonna do something. And so you've got a dog that keeps getting out and keeps being a problem, and apparently, these 3 days weren't the first time. There's been other people around the neighborhood where the dogs moved through green spaces and things over to another street and things over the last 6 months. And so this has been a problem dog, and this person apparently is not that great of an owner. On Thursday, it was out. I think Animal Control took it home and said, you need to fix your fence. And the second day, I think he said they gave him a ticket. And then the next day, it's out again, and the fence still hadn't been fixed apparently. So, in these cases, yeah, I think it would be good after a known escape artist like that can get picked up and a judgment be made about banning the dog from Maumelle. Say you're a problem. Let's get out of here. You're a danger. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any additional council member comments? Councilmember, City Attorney City Attorney. I can't undo the button order. Okay, Councilmember Grunwald.
Just a super fast, easy question. I just wanted to follow up on the Audubon-Montpelier intersection. Last I remember, we were waiting, I think, from something from RDOT.
Yes, I don't have any developments. I can follow up on that. What the status was, we conducted the warrant study, submitted the warrant study to RDOT, who was supposed to get back with us on to say that it was warranted so that we could begin the engineering process, the traffic engineering process to get approved. And I haven't heard anything back, to my knowledge, about the warrant study. So that warrants some more pushing on my end. Or if we said Mike Hogan's not here, he might have got something. But we'll follow up on that. Any additional council member comments? I'm not falling for it. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you what the latest status is on the roundabout out there in Country Club by the bank?
You mean the one we had the groundbreaking ceremony on at the end of August?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure what the last briefing I gave was. We had last March or April submitted the money to Entergy to relocate their lines, and it was our understanding that they had relocated their power lines. What we think happened is when the tornado hit, it just fell off their radar. Their crews that had the work order or something to go do it in April of 23 didn't do it. We broke ground, contractors started unloading, and then we saw that the power poles had not been moved, because there's some in that vicinity that will remain and some not. So it took us a while to get Entergy to relocate their lines, and when they did, it became apparent that their poles were remaining in place because of Comcast lines that were on the power poles. So we have we're now waiting on Comcast to relocate their lines so that Entergy can come back out and relocate their power poles. I've pulled every string I can unsuccessfully to get Comcast to move that forward. I haven't checked in the last week to see if they have been moved, but that's the status. As soon as the power poles are moved, we will begin work. And I'm smiling now because it's a trigger point for me, the relocation of power poles in projects, especially due to that having been my number one issue I brought up at every single engineering meeting for the design of that project. In fact, I had entire meetings making sure utilities were moved, but apparently they weren't. Thankfully, they realized before construction started, so it just sits there as is, but.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. City Attorney.
Y'all might have read in the newspaper, there was a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago having to do with public officials' social media accounts. I've been in contact with the Municipal League to see if they're preparing some guidance to give to city officials all over the state, and that is in process. So I will have that for you hopefully soon. The case had to do with somebody who had both private, he kept it as his private account, and then he like converted it into a private, and he did public business on it as well, and then he blocked somebody. And I think they made a First Amendment claim out of that, if I remember correctly. But in any case, I'll have details on that hopefully soon.
Thank you. Please keep us informed. I know you will. City clerk comments?
I'd like to end it with something light. There is an Easter egg hunt on Saturday, so bring your kiddos, grandkids out Saturday, Rolling Oaks, 9 o'clock sharp.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing further, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn the city council meeting of March the 25th, 2024.
I've got a motion. Do I hear a second? I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion